The Creek Indians of Oklahoma have powerful, ancient traditions. Traditions that live on in ceremonies still practiced by some today. One of those traditions, handed down from generation to generation, is the strong will to survive as a people. Nowhere is this strength better reflected than in the condition of the Creek Nation today, a progressive, adaptable tribe facing the challenges of the future with high regard for the ways of the past. The Muskogee, or Creek tribe, with a population of more than 30,000, in recent years has distinguished itself as one of the most progressive tribes in Oklahoma. More than a decade ago, Principal Chief Claude Cox and his advisors began identifying the problems faced by Indian people. They set priorities and goals to focus on as the Creek Nation re-emerged as a functioning tribal organization. Finally, after several years of hard work, a new Creek Constitution was ratified by the Creek people on an historic day in 1979, forming a firm foundation for the future of the tribe. But the path leading from the ancient days of tribal power up to that momentous day in 1979 was long and sad. Long before the white man came to this country, the Muskogee people had settled in the southeastern region of North America. By the time these European newcomers began struggling to establish themselves along the eastern seaboard, a powerful Indian confederacy already existed there. The dominant force of this confederacy was the Muskogee tribe, known to the white man as Creeks, because their towns were clustered along the streams and rivers that snaked through the land. The Creeks at first welcomed the early white settlers and even adopted some of their ways. But by the time of the American Revolution in 1776, the power of the Confederacy was diminishing. Georgians were encroaching on the Creek Nation, and the tribe was being pressured to turn over great amounts of land through treaties. The Red Stick War of 1813 and 1814 was a further blow to the size and power of the tribe. The United States Army, under the command of General Andrew Jackson, made it clear that further resistance was useless. Finally, the Creeks, along with several other tribes, were totally displaced from their homelands. During the forced migration of 1836, called the Trail of Tears, thousands of Creek people died on the way to their new home, west of the Mississippi River. But once again, the industrious Muskogee people began to build a nation in the unfamiliar land. Old traditions, such as the annual Green Corn Festival, were carried on, and new institutions like mission schools and churches were started. The will to survive sustained the Creek people and allowed them to adapt to their new home. But the Creeks were soon drawn into another of the white man's conflicts, the Civil War. It, in fact, became a civil war among the Creeks. Many of the tribes supported the South, while others maintained loyalty to the Union. At the war's end, the tribe was left broken and divided. The determined people of the Creek tribe had to rebuild their nation once again. With a spark of that ancient strength still alive, the Creek nation did survive. A revised form of government with a written constitution and code of laws was established to meet the challenges of the late 1800s. A permanent council house was constructed in Okmulgee, and from that location the affairs of the Creek Nation were administered by representatives elected by the people. But the coming of statehood for Oklahoma in 1907 brought an end to tribal governments, in spite of their many accomplishments. Since then, the Creeks and the other tribes have been mostly ignored, until 1971, when the Creek people were allowed to hold tribal elections and Claude Cox was elected chief.
In the early 70s, we set some priorities, and those were in housing, education, unemployment, and health care for the ongoing benefit of the Creek people in making this a good, strong Creek nation.
The past few years have been good years of growth for the Creeks. More problems are being resolved, and more people are being favorably affected by the programs carried on through the Creek Nation. Even so, Chief Cox pushes on for greater improvements.
We must allow the decisions of the Tribal Council to replace decisions by federal courts, and we must unite behind those decisions because they are our own. One characteristic of our people is their will to rebuild. Our nation has rebuilt itself countless times in the past. After DeSoto's invasion in 1540, after Andrew Jackson's invasion in 1814, after our removal from our homelands in the South, and after the tragedy of the U.S. Civil War, and after the allotment of our lands, and after the suppression of our tribal government. Each time our people have recovered and have rebuilt, have progressed in the ways we choose for ourselves. The tragedy of suppression of our tribal government has ended. Rebuild our nation is our mutual responsibility. Thank you.
Guided by the Creek National Council and other concerned leaders, the Creek people are enjoying greater control over their own lives. The results of programs started in recent years will have impact for generations. The Creek Nation is again strong. Its spirit is firmly rooted in the past, yet its vision is focused on the future. And the will to survive remains a strong tradition of its people.